Okay, in this episode of Wheel and Widgets, we've got a notes page for sketching a graph. We know on an exam, an Year 12 exam, they're going to want us to sketch graphs, and we're going to know they're going to want to see intercepts, both x and y intercepts as well as turning points. So first of all, let's define or assign a function. We've done this before. Control M will help us to assign a function. We're just going to call it f of x. On your exam, call it whatever you want. When they have h of x, use h of x. But if they use h of t, you still need to have x because your calculator will not sketch without the x. We're going to assign it. So control equals once more, and we can just call it x squared, whatever it might be. To find x-intercepts, we know that the y value, or f of x in this case, must be 0. So we're going to enter the solve function. Now the solve function can be found through menu, calculations, and then algebra. Remember, once you get to the calculation step, everything becomes as normal with the calculator section. So in here, we're going to type in our f of x, or we can use our variable option. F of x equals 0, comma x, and we press enter, and it solves it for us. So it just tells us in this case there's only one x-intercept, which makes sense because our turning point is 0, 0 of our graph here. But we can change that and we get different results. Remember, I can change it, I can press enter, and it automatically carries things through. Down here, I want to find the y-intercept. So I'm going to do f of 0, press enter, it substitutes in for you itself. So now you have enough to be able to sketch your graph with your intercepts. You also have to find turning points though. So how do we find turning points? We must find the derivative. So we're going to save a derivative here. I'm going to call it f derivative, of x. Doesn't matter what the label is as long as it's not f of x still. Again, we're going to take some stuff we've already learned in the previous video, commands, and enter them in. There's my derivative. I now want to solve that equal to 0. Again, I can have f derivative sitting there, whoops, and it tells what the derivative is. Shouldn't have any issues in this case, but it's always nice to see it. So menu, calculations, algebra, solve. This does feel like it takes a bit of time to set up now, almost longer than in an exam, but if you have it all ready before the exam, it'll do it for you. So let's solve this f derivative thing. I'm going to collect it from the variables option. Derivative equals 0 for x. Press enter, and we have the x value of 0, which is nice. And I can substitute that into my equation now to find the y value, which in our case would be 0. So I could type in 0 there and I would substitute it in, but I've already done that above. If I want to sketch this graph and see what it looks like, I can now add an extra page. So Control I adds an extra page. Or you can do Control Doc, it does that as well. You add a graph. Now in here, I don't have to retype the graph. I can just type f of x from the previous page, collect it from there. Press enter, sketches the graph for me. Now I said before, notes pages are really nice because they're dynamic. So I can change this option here and it'll automatically change all the way through this document here, but also the next page. So I'm going to press enter now, and everything you notice changed on the way through, and this graph has also moved across, and it changes. And it works the same no matter what I do, what kind of graph. Got x cubed there, press enter, it's now introduced extra intercepts. It's now got a different derivative, and we have multiple derivatives in this case. I can go back into here, and I can see the graph has now changed straight away. That's all well and good, it's really nice to get all these things, but the problem is with a widget, you can only save it with one page. I cannot save it like now. If I save it as a widget now, it will delete page 2 and it will keep 1.1. I want to keep both of them. If I've gone to the effort to set it up, I want to keep both. So the way I do that is by pressing Control and 6. No, Control and 4. I always get them the wrong way around. Control and 4 will combine them into one page. Notice at the top it says 1.1. Now you have one page. And we can demonstrate the dynamic nature of this by just changing these numbers over here. And it carries it all the way through the left-hand side and immediately changes the right-hand side as well. So it's really quite a nice feature of the widgets. Once I've done that, I've got it into one page. I can have up to 4 pages in here. But once I've got it all grouped together, Control 4 groups them all together, I can now save it as a widget. So I go into my document, I file, save as. Remember, I must save it as a widget. If I don't save it as a widget, it won't be there next time as a widget. So double click on the widget option, comes in here, I can call whatever I want. In this particular case, it's a sketch graph, which is nice. And I press enter. Something I haven't actually done, which I can do, is enter endpoints here. So I might do that in a further video just to add on to this. But for now, we've got our graph sketched all here. I can restrict it. In fact, let's do it now. So at the end here within the box, just for a moment, I'm going to Control 6 and ungroup so I can see what I'm doing a bit better. Within the box here, I'm going to add my conditional symbol, which remember is a control in here. I'm going to put my domain on the end here. And the domain will be, I'm going to call it XL. And I shouldn't be slack, I should use the calculator. X to XU. Now XL is designed to be the upper value, the lower value, sorry, and XL is the upper value. So XL might be the lowest value, so in my case here, my lower value might be -3, and my upper value might be 2. And that'll make sure it only sketches for that, and these are highlighted. So again, if I have a particular graph that's given to me on an exam, all I have to do is change my lower and upper values, and it gives it to me. It also will help me find my endpoint, so I can put a couple of spaces on the end, put another math box in, and I can do f of XL, press enter, and it gives me the value. And put a few spaces on the end here, put a math box in, f of XU, press enter, and it gives me my endpoints. So now I know the endpoints in exact terms as well. I notice all these other ones, when I group them, have all ungreened as such. They've all deactivated. The way I can activate them is by Control A, menu, actions, evaluate. And now it evaluates them all once more, which is nice. Notice the derivative now has kind of like a hybrid function symbol, and it tells you the domain over which it's defined, because remember, a derivative at the endpoints is not defined. If you have an unrestricted graph, unlikely on a Year 12 exam, but if you have an unrestricted graph given to you, simply delete these ends, or just choose a really big number, big negative and big positive number that's outside the domain or outside the scale that you've been asked to sketch. So I'm going to group it once more. Control 4 groups it all up, and now I'm going to save it again as my widget. Doc, file, should save as the widget because I've already saved it as a widget, which is nice. I'm going to close it down. If I'm using it in an exam, I want to open it again, so here's my calculator. Again, I've got my really bad algebra skills. Solve that for X. Okay, now I need to sketch a graph. How do I do it? Remember, we talked about you can Control I or Control Doc, and now I'm going to add the widget in. I'm going to, of course, add the one I just talked about. Press add, and this time I've got both of them there in one go. It's often nice to see them side by side, but don't always. So to ungroup those ones, Control 6 will ungroup them, and I don't have to see them anymore, which is really nice. The last thing I need to remind you of before I finish this video is on the left-hand side here, notice all these things, I'll tidy that up, all these things are not activated. So to do that, you go Control A, which still works on your calculator like it does on the computer, Menu, Actions, Evaluate, and it's all evaluated for you, and it's all dynamic once more. That's how to create a widget for sketch graphs with your endpoints here at the top, with your x-intercepts, with your y-intercept, the derivative, and the derivative equal to 0 to find the turning points. Hopefully that was helpful. Leave comments down the bottom for anything else you'd like me to do on a widget for you. See you next time.